Dory 1, this is Fire Team Delta. Dad's coming home.
Welcome to the Military Veteran Dad Podcast, where it is our mission to bring every dad home. I am your host, Ben Cloy. I'm a United States Marine veteran, husband, and a father. We will bring authentic conversations to inspire action in your life so we can close the gap between the dad you are today and the dad you want to be tomorrow. This is the Military Veteran Dad Podcast. Is this on? Welcome back to Military Veteran Dad. This is Fatherhood Friday. I am your host, Ben Cloy, and this is your official welcome to the weekend. I hope you've had an amazing week. I hope that episode on Monday gave you the energy and the courage to go out there and do something different in this past week. And this, I hope, gives you some different perspective on going into the weekend, but then also really some of the roles that we play as fathers. So this week in the Cloy household, our cat died on Monday. And it was very sudden. We didn't see it coming. He was an older cat, so I mean, it could have happened at any time, but we didn't necessarily know it was going to happen. And so, boom, he passed away. And so that was something that as a father, man, I can say that I grew up leaps and bounds because one, having to dig a hole, put your cat in that hole and have your kids be around it and just be crying at the same time as your kids are crying and trying to figure out what they need so that way you can grow with them. It was a really emotional, a really good, but then also just very sad, as you would expect, moment. And the part I want to share with you today is remembering that, and this is what this experience taught me, is fatherhood is not unicorns and rainbows. I talk about a lot of the good stuff on this podcast, but this week I was reminded of the downside. And not necessarily the downside in the way that you would normally think of a downside, but this is the role that why it's so important to become a good dad, because our kids need us through these types of experiences. My oldest daughter has been having a really hard time, and it's been really emotional for her throughout this week. And from the very beginning, I could see all of my learning, all of my training, all of my growth kind of coming to fruition of like, man, I can't imagine having this 5 years ago and how I would have been able to show up or who I would have showed up as, because for the most part, my biggest role is just being there and creating a nice, safe place for her to feel what she needs to feel, to talk about what she needs to feel, and just explain that this is all the natural part of life, of just using this as a coaching experience that yes, death happens. Yes, life isn't permanent. We're not guaranteed tomorrow. But when it does face us, we have to learn to grow through it, that it's a grieving process, that it is a process. And all of this are things that we've been talking about all week long. And it has just been painting the other side of fatherhood, that why this is so important. Why is it so important to come home? Because our kids need us on the good side of life to have fun, have adventure, to explore who they are, to just help them figure out life. But then on this other side, we are a grounding mechanism for them to get through in a very troubled time, that their emotions are not as tuned in as us. They have not experienced. This is the first pet that we've lost in the family, so it's the first time we've gone through this. First, probably real death that within they can remember, and all of it is new. And so within that, I have a role, and I've been playing that role of helping them understand what it means in different moments and helping them get through it. This is where we need to show up. Like, when I've been talking about on the podcast, be there for the little things so they bring you the big things, I can see it over and over this past week of how my daughter continues to bring me the little things and the big things that she's feeling. And she has felt really, really safe talking to me. She's felt really safe just getting under my shoulder and crying. And if I had not put in the reps with bedtime talk, with conversations, with just practicing being there, all of those moments that happened this week might have been a little bit harder. I might have had to push a little bit to try to get her to open up about what she was feeling. But if anything, the water's flowing. She's talking about what she's feeling pretty regularly. It's fairly strong, and we're getting through it. And I also want to share a moment that happened at school that I was really worried about when she went to school. She was worried about when she was going to school that this week is her third grade testing. So she was worried about how she was going to be able to focus. She was worried about all the kids calling her a crybaby at school. And that is just a moment within her life. But to her, this is just as real. Like, no matter what I've got going on in my life, to her, this is life. And so when she got to school, she was crying on the bus, and she was crying when she got off the bus. And a teacher noticed, and a teacher brought her into the counselor's office, and that counselor helped calm her down. walked her down to her classroom. The counselor told the classroom what was going on and what happened to the cat, and created this nice, safe place for Sophia to feel what she needed to feel and not feel judged. To have that shown that when you're hurting, the world can show up with kindness. And that's the important part that we're trying to teach as dads, that the world isn't as bad as it often looks and often that we feel it can be. That when it needs to show up in a great way, and if you create that safe place, it generally does. So I couldn't be more happy for the school district that we go to and the teachers and the staff at that school, because it continued to shine throughout Corona. But then in this one day, they taught her that when you're hurting and when you open up, the world isn't going to hurt you even more. They're going to embrace you. And I mean, that message applies to veterans so much as well, because we think that if we open up and we talk about what we're going to do, the world is going to reject us. The world is going to label us. But man, there's going to be any further from the truth on that idea that veterans often buy into way too popular and way too easily. So the message I want to leave you with today is, how are you creating those moments and preparing for something sad like this? Because you don't know when it's going to happen. It could be tomorrow, it could be a week, it could be a month. But these are the moments where your parenting and where how you've showed up as a dad previously really get tested, because you want her to open up. You want her to tell you what's going on. But if you haven't created those moments and that connection and that bond with any of your kids, this could have been happen with any of my other kids as well. They've been dealing it with a little bit more stoicism and kind of let it out in a little bit different way. But they're younger, so that's what I would expect. And this is where it all comes to fruition. All the stuff that we've been practicing and training and talking about really gets applied. And we get to kind of see an early result of who are we becoming. There's another moment that I've been realizing throughout this is that as she grows up and she becomes an adult, she's going to remember this moment, not for the sadness, but she's going to remember what it felt like when a man, her dad, showed up and just let her feel what she needed to feel. There's a really good chance that that's going to be a quality of her husband in the future because of how I've modeled it to her early on in her life, that she's going to value that she's going to look for that. She's going to look for that similarity. And so, like I've said in this whole episode, how we show up in these little moments have compounding effects. And this week, with our cat Oliver dying, it highlighted in a big way of how it's all coming together. And it's still, I'm only in the halfway point. 9 years old is a halfway point at 18. So I'm still in the only early stages of how this is all unfolding. But I'm really happy to where it's going. And I'm really happy that all the work that I've been doing, I'm so happy that I woke up so many years ago to try to be a better dad, because like I said, I can't imagine trying to go through this in any other way with any other set of knowledge and with any other group of men. Like having you guys out there, knowing what's going on, having other men in my life to help grow, I would have probably collapsed under this because I wouldn't have known what to do. I would have internalized this feeling, feeling helpless and not knowing what to do, but I didn't. When I was feeling heavy, I reached out. I've been opening up to different people in my life, telling them what I've been going through and crying when I need to cry on my own terms. And all of that has been part of the process. Let me tell you, the Ben Cloy of 6 years ago would not have had that wisdom. He would have not have done that and had the courage to do any of the things that I've been doing this past week. So remember, this is a testament that the stuff we talk about in this podcast matters. It does get applied. And it's these little moments like this where you can kind of get to see a little bit of visualization of how the R&D lab is going to come out, because these are the moments they reveal of what you've been teaching them and how you've been teaching them to handle life, even when life gives you something difficult, like losing a cat. So with that, now that I brought the room down, I hope that you guys have an amazing weekend. I hope you guys are able to find some great connection out there. And I'll be back again with you on Monday.